Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Absolute Scenes, our series where we review IMDb's bucket list of 100 films to see before you die. Today, we have The Hunt, directed in 2012 by Thomas Vinterberg, and stars Mads Mikkelsen, most famous from Hannibal and Casino Royale, plays Le Chiffre. In this film, he stars as Lukas, a teacher who was wrongly accused of molesting a child or acting inappropriately sexually towards a child. And we see him become a pariah within his local community, a very tight knit community, and how he has to emotionally deal with that, and also her relationship with everyone else within the community, and also how the community fully responds to him. This is a drama set in Denmark, so fair warning for people that don't like subtitles. If you want to enjoy this, you better learn Danish. For me, I actually did not mind the subtitles one bit. Mitchell, have you seen this film before? Did you know anything going into it? What were your thoughts?
I hadn't seen it before, didn't know anything about it. Purposely didn't read the synopsis before I watched it, and everything in it came as a surprise to me in terms of the content of it and the subject matter. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was a really engrossing film. I was texting you whilst I was watching it because I was watching it before you, and
Yes.
I was genuinely emotionally invested in parts of this in terms of feeling uncomfortable, but found a lot of it quite unnerving. So I think in terms of the film in that way, yeah, I was really interested in it. Enjoyed watching it in a bit of a difficult type way. But yeah, I enjoyed it as a film. What about you?
Yeah, I had no idea anything going into this. I didn't even read any kind of what the story was about. I just saw that it had Mads Mikkelsen in, who I know from quite a few things. And then obviously I started getting a couple of texts from you, and I was like, stop spoiling anything. So I tried to go into it as blind as possible. We will be going through spoiler free first, rating this film, and then moving on to spoilers. The fact that I mentioned already that he is wrongly accused is not a spoiler. And that is something that I really enjoyed in this film. I loved the fact that the tension comes from knowing that he's innocent, and very much like the character having no voice to influence anyone else in the story. I thought it was a really clever way to go. A lot of films like this, especially if it was British or American, would make this a bit more of a did he do it, didn't he do it? Which is great, very different type of film. But a lot of the energy within the writing and the directing then has to go into creating doubt and creating enough scenarios where it's believable that he did do it and enough where he didn't do it. This film just allows itself to commit fully to this man slowly deteriorating, and the community aspect to it, which I absolutely loved. Everyone in how they sort of started treating him. I think it asked a lot of poignant questions, and I'm with you. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I sat there shouting at the telly. I was frustrated. I was angry, and I was having, I think, a far more emotional time than the main character watching it. What is worth saying is this director also directed a film a long time ago, about 20 odd years ago. I think it's called The Celebration, which deals with the opposite side of the coin in terms of subject matter. So he made a film about child molestation, but more about like pedophile rings, and he created a story where obviously the adults were guilty. So he wanted to show this as another side of the coin in terms of how children can sometimes make things up, but how they can also play the victims. What did you make of the acting in this? Was that something that impressed you?
I thought the acting of the main character at times I found it quite frustrating, but at other times I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So to some extent, I guess I was frustrated at the character and his behavior as opposed to the actor. But it just felt like
Yeah.
he wasn't showing much emotion at times, and I wasn't sure if, as I say, if I was getting that from how he was meant to be playing it, or he just wasn't bringing enough out of it. But It seemed a little sterile. Some of his kind of behavior at times, I don't know, and his emotion. But then the scene, I don't want to go into spoilers too much, but there is a scene which is a real crux of the film, where you can just see all the emotion on that on his face, and everything that
Yeah.
feeling through that entire time, and that whole tension and frustration and anger that the character's been living through. You can see it all in his face, and it's absolutely fantastic piece of acting in that particular scene.
I really enjoyed his acting. I think what they were going for was thou doth protest too much. And there's also an element of real empathy from him towards other characters. So he understands why his best friend would be angry at him. So he can't, if it was just something else, there's a way of expressing your anger. You can punch someone in the face, but he can't do that because he knows that if the shoe was on the other foot, he knows how he'd behave. I thought that scene, what you're talking about, we can talk about it in spoilers. It was amazing. I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed his acting. I like the acting of the young girl, particularly considering she was 7 and talking about some of these things in such detail without it being hugely graphic. Was really surprising how she portrayed it. I thought his son was excellent. I thought in general the sound design was really good. I felt like I could hear every breath. It was like there was tension at all times. And there's a scene where he has an encounter in a supermarket where there's a bit of an altercation. You can hear everything, and it is excruciatingly realistic. And I just really, really appreciated that. There were some things that I didn't enjoy with the film, and then I've had a little look afterwards, and actually I've went, pulling my hair out even more, because a lot of this is actually based on real life, which I didn't know. So I want to talk about that mainly in spoilers. First 5 or 10 minutes, it is tough to get into. I thought it did a lot that it needed to do. It was first 10 minutes were very, very important because we fully care for Lukas. We know he's a nice guy. We know he's fun. He's someone that's very caring, and we needed all that. But for someone that hadn't read what was going to happen, I was very much like, where is this going? What's happening? But I think because we've just said what's going to happen, I think it probably just serves a bit better. But the ending is something that's, for me, it has one of those moments where it sort of skips a long period of time. I'll talk about it more in spoilers. And I understand why they've done it. And I think it is a creative thematic choice, but it's something that I didn't like that much cathartically. What did you make of that? Of how it all went? Were you invested for the entire thing? Were you a bit bored? How did that go?
Yeah. For once, Dan, I'm gonna agree with you on some things. So I mean, the start, I agree. It's a little slow, and again, because I hadn't read what it was going to be about, I was kind of searching for the story in the first 10 minutes or so. But as you say, there's some really important things that they need to establish with regards to what he's like as a person and what the community's like in which he lives, and because they're going to be the two absolute pillars of what this story is going to be about. The ending, I wasn't keen. I didn't feel the need that we needed to have a skip forward and then to see that. And actually, from a realism point of view, as we'll talk about in the spoiler, the detail of it, I didn't really like where they chose that ending to be. I thought it was a bit of a weak choice.
Yeah, I don't know how you felt about it, but for me, once I was into that story, I could have had this go on for another hour quite comfortably. I was so completely invested in everything going on here. There is a narrative choice that I thought disrupted things a little bit, which I just think if you moved a certain scene towards the end, things could be a lot more believable. I just think there's maybe a slight editing choice there. But with that being said, I think we should just rate this, give everyone the opportunity who hasn't seen it to watch it, and then come back and we can really dig in. So Mitchell, how much did you enjoy this?
I genuinely really enjoyed it. It's not often I get emotionally invested into a film. and to a point where I was really rooting for the main character. That I wanted the story to play out in a certain way. So I'm going to give it a 9. I really enjoyed it as a film.
Wow. Yeah, I'm giving it an 8.6. The only sort of letdowns for me in terms of enjoyment were, again, one of the editing choices, and the ending for me was just a little unsatisfying, which we'll talk about. And again, I understand why they did it. I'm guessing, but I think I do. But I still didn't like it. How good was this film on a technical standpoint?
Yeah, I think I mean this is very different to some of the last videos we've looked at when they were all about the visual language and how it was shot and things. This is much more straightforward in that sense. But I think what was good about this is about some of the narrative choices and how they choose to tell the story. Things that they've chosen to omit and really concentrate on in the narrative and the plot, which I think from a technical point of view of how they want to tell this story and really focus on the theme is a really good choice for this. So I'm gonna give it a 7.8.
Ooh. So I think this film is probably the most in line in terms of, for me, how I enjoyed it and how good it is. So I'm going to give it an 8.4 in terms of technical quality. Again, that one edit. It actually gets a boost from the ending, even though I didn't like it. The ending is, I think, for what it wants to say, is actually really good. I think there's just one or two little things in there that, in terms of maybe some of the supporting actors, that weren't fantastic. One of the issues that they had is, in terms of expressive video language, is they couldn't do some of it because they were trying their absolute best, to make Lukas look innocent and not like a pedophile. Which, if you have a low angle and he's got these pedo glasses on, that immediately shows some sort of distrust from the audience. So the hands were tied. So I think they did a great job, but it doesn't allow it to do so much. The cinematography is beautiful. It is a beautiful looking film. So yeah, I'd go for that. I don't think there's much more that they could have done, but there were some little things that we'll talk about. So if you haven't seen the film, we've both recommended that you go see this. This, I think, is probably the highest rated film that we've done so far. Which makes sense. It is technically the highest rated film we've done so far. If you disagree with us, please leave your thoughts in the comments. If this film really affected you, leave it in the comments. Like, subscribe. And we are now going to go into spoilers. So here's your warning. So Mitchell, let's talk about the ending. I think we should just jump right in, talk about the ending. So basically, there is the scene that you were talking about in the church. I'm guessing that's the scene that you were talking about,
Yeah.
the church scene,
Yeah.
which I think shows how good it is that you didn't mention anything in. I know it's the church scene. It was fantastic. It was tense, superbly acted. The dialogue in that scene was brilliant. And then there's a reconciliation between the two best friends, the father of the daughter, and from Lukas himself. And then it just skips forward to the very end, which is quite an obscure ending anyway, which I think we can probably talk about that as well. But the thing that I didn't like was, all this stuff happened. He's been beaten up. He's been threatened. He's been ostracized. And one of the people that's done this, he saved their life at the beginning of the film. They got cramp and he's pulled them out. Like, this is a fantastic guy. And obviously, if you think he's a paedophile, then you are going to treat him badly. But narratively, I'll jump back. It didn't quite make sense because it was proven by the police that all the children were lying. So at that point, there should be enough doubt in people's mind to go, like, all these kids were lying. There's proof. He doesn't have a basement. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. Maybe they're wrong. And that's enough doubt not to throw a tin of baked beans off his head. You can still be like, look, I don't want you coming around. I'm not sure, but you can not be a complete dick to him. But I think why it's jumped forward, as much as I didn't like it, is the exact thing they were going for, and it's the word catharsis. So he's been through so much, and unfortunately, there is a scene that I want to talk about separately afterwards because I'm really, really annoyed by it. Like, it's a great scene, but Lucas's reaction to it, and I think your guest star can come in for this one, Mitchell. But Lucas's reaction to that is a joke. And like, that's one reason why I lowered it down on the technical rating, because I just thought that's not realistic. But because Lucas is robbed of all catharsis, we as viewers are, there isn't any real coming back. How do people make up for the crimes committed against them, the assault, the killing of his pet, all of this stuff that happens, and he is left feeling in a way where most likely betrayed, fearful, and there will still always be a little bit of doubt in everyone's minds. And because he'll never fully recover from that, I think the directors went, well, the audience gets none of that as well. This is all through Lucas's lens, and that includes any kind of reconciliation with other characters. But I personally didn't like it. I wanted the catharsis. I wanted another hour of these people realizing that they were wrong.
I think that's a problem. It really watered down the emotive experience of it, because like I said, I was so invested in it. I was angry on his behalf. I want him to be vindicated so much, and for people to realize that they were so wrong and they should have trusted their friend, and they should be a bit more questioning of who they trust and what information is correct and stuff. For the director to then just fast forward it and they've all forgiven him and nothing's happened, gives you as the viewer the kind of false belief that it wasn't that big a deal for Lucas. Oh, he's got over it quick. Oh, it mustn't have been that big a thing. Even though I've just spent the last hour incredibly emotive and angry about it myself on his behalf. And then I felt a bit cheated at the end in a, oh well, maybe I shouldn't have been that emotional about it. Maybe I shouldn't have got that invested in it, because it doesn't seem like Lucas is bothered. He's forgiven all his mates. They're going drinking and shooting in the woods again. So I think, and to me, it just didn't feel very real. I mean, if I had been through a situation like that, it would have been like hell. And I'm sure there is a bit of a motivation to stay and be like, yeah, I've proved you all wrong. She was lying, I was telling the truth. But I just think you would move away. You would start again. There's too much water under the bridge at that point. Irrespective of them being your best friends, they've chosen not to trust you at a moment when it was, something that was going to have the biggest impact on your life that you could imagine. So I found it unrealistic and also a little cheated as the viewer.
We could watch it for another hour, but it doesn't bring his dog back. And I want to talk about the dog death. Horrible.
I can reveal that the actress is here with us tonight. She's here. Should we get her up on camera?
Yes, please, Mitchell.
Come here, Fanny.
Tonight, Mitchell, we've got...
The dog's called Fanny in the film, by the way. I'm not just summoning Fanny.
Fanny. Yes, I'm aware.
Here we are.
Oh,
here we are, Danish movie star, Fanny. You played a brilliant dead role, didn't you?
I enjoyed your text. I've had to cover the dog's eyes.
Well, she didn't want to see. She didn't want to see it. I think she was actually a little upset.
Obviously, I'm not surprised she was upset. I was upset, and I'm still raging. So, the scene in the film, obviously, he finds his dog dead, and he angrily buries it in the rain, and then does nothing. And I'm just thinking, I'm not being funny, right? But someone has killed a dog. Where's the justice for the dog? You can't just go, you can't kill dogs. Obviously you can, but it's horrendous. You can't not call the police, even if the police think you are a paedophile. The dog doesn't deserve anything. It's a little dog. So I find whoever's done that is horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And why would you want to be in that community anyway? If their way of getting back at you is to kill an innocent dog, that's horrendous. I can't say horrendous enough. But for him then not to call the police, it's part of his own stoicism. It's part of his own journey. It's incredibly self-centered. Like that, Fanny needs justice for Fanny. So I didn't like that, and ultimately, I'd quite like to have seen even the last hour just him finding out who killed the dog, and then maybe could have turned it like a Liam Neeson Taken style movie where he's, one at the head, one at the chest. Obviously, I wouldn't have liked to have seen that, but I would like to have seen something happen with regards to that, because I can't believe they just left it. They didn't tell you who did it, what happened, and he's forgiven everyone at the end. I was fuming, absolutely fuming.
I think, I mean, there is a bit of artistic license in this film, though, isn't there, Dan? Because they're choosing
Yeah,
to focus on the social aspects of guilty in the court of public appeal and how it affects the community and how it affects his relationship with his friends. They've
yeah,
omitted everything that would actually happen in reality about due process, psychologists. There was next to nothing on the actual police investigation. He got taken off into a car and then got brought back. You never saw, for example, police come and take statements off people and stuff like that. So they were choosing to not focus on any of those aspects. So I think,
yeah.
did the dog need to die? Because they weren't ever going to include anything to do with an investigation into who killed the dog or him reporting it to the police, because they've chosen to omit that from all the element of the child paedophilia that is the main topic of the film. So they're not going to bring it in for a bit of a side. But it's the same as, like, he gets punched in the supermarket and quite badly beaten. That is assault.
Yeah.
That is a criminal offense what they do to him, and they don't explore that at all. So
I wanted more of the emotional investigation for him. He's got to go back into that supermarket, and they've sort of got to be like, yeah, sorry about that. And his emotional release going through all, I would have liked to have seen it. One scene that I got really angry with during the film, and I was about to mark it down in terms of realism, because I couldn't believe what was coming out of this person's mouth. And then I'd written my notes and all that sort of stuff, and then I watched the Q&A with the director and with Mads Mikkelsen, and it turns out that this particular scene was from a direct transcript with a real psychologist. So I've obviously changed my score reflecting it, but I could not believe that the psychologist in this film was asking the girl these type of questions. And I don't just mean quite vulgar questions, but closed questions. Obviously, the entire point of finding if you want to try and find someone guilty, you want to ask a lot of closed questions, just yes or no's, because you can wrap someone up in it. Obviously, there is a reason why politicians are trained never to say the words yes and no. But when you are trying to get the truth out of someone that you consider to be a victim or innocent, or making an allegation, it should be as many open questions as possible so that the truth can be discovered through everything. But this man is putting words into her mouth, things like, did white stuff come out of the end of it? Like, that is something that he is now planted in her brain. He's planting things, and I was losing my mind watching this. But it turns out that is actually a real transcript from a real psychologist in a real case like this. And I just couldn't believe it. And it makes the effect of the film even better, because this stuff really happens, and I think it paints a great moral question in terms of who do you believe in these situations, because there are pedophiles out there and they deserve every justice we have available coming to them, but also there are innocent people accused of these crimes, and that must be it's got to be the worst thing to be accused of. So I thought, like, really exploring that, like we mentioned earlier, in terms of it not being a has he or hasn't he, but just flat out he hasn't. The bit where obviously they find out all the children are lying, that also comes from a real case study, and it was really good to see how the child in this scenario half became a victim, because having these things planted, then a mother saying things like, "Oh, you just can't remember it," like turning her into some sort of weird charitable case, and like, she is turning it into a future victim. But then also, because this lie spiraled out of control, his son then spitting in her face and saying, "Why are you lying about my dad?" which is objectively a disgusting thing to do. But I also think if I was a 15-year-old and I was that emotionally invested and someone said that my dad was a paedophile, it might not be the right thing to do, and it might not necessarily be something that I would do. But you would think horrible things. You would want to. There was a point where I was just thinking, "Oh, I want to punch that girl in the face." She was obviously a 7-year-old girl who's made up a little white lie that she doesn't realize the cost of this lie. She doesn't realize how serious it is. And then adults have come in and played their part, and it's spiraled. And it is her fault, but like she doesn't. She just tried to sort of come back on it all, and she deserves, to be listened to in that regard as well. In all emotions that I was feeling throughout this of utter confusion about what I would do, what the right reaction towards these people are, because is violence the answer? You just want to punch everyone and everything, but you can't. She is a 7-year-old girl. This is your best friend. Like if you had children, Mitch, and I was accused of this, your child, I'd appreciate your point of view and that we've been friends for so long, and I would want to punch you in the face. It really wrapped me around its little finger, this film, and made me think horrible things, but also made me feel incredible empathy at the same time. So it's top marks for that.
We were the same in that child psychologist scene. I mean, I've seen enough documentaries on Netflix about how to conduct a correct police investigation and interview, and he was full of leading questions, wasn't he,
Dr. Mitch?
It's an interesting point with the girl, because there's even times in the film where she tells them that she's not telling the truth, or she's made it up, or I can't remember exact wording, but she's made it clear to them that what she said as a statement wasn't the full truth, and they almost like dismiss that, or they're happy to not believe her when she says that.
Yeah,
it was a very interesting take, I think, on what adults will choose to believe, what they believe they have to act upon and stuff. And there was lots of people in this film in incredibly difficult situations, and seeing how they all reacted and behaved was interesting. What did you think about the decision to not include as a character on screen the Lucas's either ex-partner or the mother of his child? She never actually appeared. He had a phone call with her, and then obviously the son was in it. But I thought it was quite an interesting omission to not have her in it, because you would think that she would be actually quite badly affected by it as well, being his ex-partner.
I hadn't really thought about it, to be fair. What I will say is, now that you've sort of brought it up, I'll be honest, I hadn't thought about it. But yeah, you're right. If, the mother of, I know it's not quite the same, but I don't know, if my ex-partner and mother of my child or whatever turned out that she was doing something with children, I'd definitely be more than concerned. And I would be questioning a lot of things. Obviously, I wouldn't want my child to be anywhere near them. There would be a lot going on. So yeah, I do think that's interesting. I just think it was a case of they've got 2 hours to have as much as possible. And obviously with films, you need to sort of pick your battles. And I suppose the question is, did the narrative need the mother in there when you've already got the community's animosity, his own demons, his part-time girlfriend that is unsure, the teacher. You've then got obviously to look at the relationship with his son. I thought bringing his son in was a really good idea. You've got the friends that do believe him. So like we said earlier on, a lot of the administrative process and the police process was missed out. And it's probably just a time constraint. I think one of the biggest sort of compliments I can give this film is I found it really inspiring, like writing my own sort of things. I mean, Mitch, I really enjoy writing. And what I'd quite like to see, off the back of this film, there's so many stories that could be told. within the same sort of threshold. And one thing that could be told is actually a very similar story from the point of view of the community, where we don't know anything about Lukas. We are a member of the community, and we are, I don't know, perhaps the victim's uncle or something. And we are given the information from the child. It all like things come out, and we are led down the garden path, and we are made to feel a certain way about a protagonist, this or an antagonist, as it would be, a certain character. But that person still be innocent at the end, so that a film could fool us with our own prejudices in these sort of situations. I do think a lot of people lean towards guilty before innocent. Yeah, I know personally I sometimes get a bit of stick because I do believe that people are innocent until proven guilty. And it's obviously difficult in these situations because in real life you have to presume both parties are innocent. You have to presume that Lucas is innocent and that Clara is innocent as well, that she is telling the truth. And that's a really sort of difficult predicament to be in. But I think a film that could play off people's prejudices, thinking that he is guilty, would also be a really cool idea. And there's so many other pathways to go by. And it's just not a film I've ever really seen before. I've seen films that are, has he done it, has he not done it? I've seen films where this type of person is guilty, but I've never done quite this way. And it was honestly, I watched it and just thought, I'm really, really happy I've watched that after I calmed down. What did you make of the very ending, like the last 5 minutes, the scene in the woods
Yeah.
with the
Well,
gun?
I was just going to say, Dan, last question. Who do you think shot him?
From what I saw, the silhouette looked like his son, but and then obviously there was a line leading up to that saying, "Oh, your grandfather missed many deer with this gun." And there was a deer there, so it looked like he might have been aiming for the deer and just missed, and it was just a shock. I think I heard that there is an alternative ending where one of the members of the community does just shoot him and leaves him there to die. I didn't, whatever the interpretation is, I didn't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily pick up that it was his son. I just saw it as being another member of the hunting party. But I took from it that there was the message that for all he was found, he was certainly deemed to not be guilty by his closest friends and his best friends, and they were the ones that mattered because they were the parents of the child. But whether there was still seeds of doubt in other members of the community, and
Yeah,
you can, I think it was trying to tell me that you can never wash yourself clean of those accusations, regardless of
yeah,
the fact that you've proved yourself innocent. And that's what I took from it as a message. And that was maybe why he was narratively, he had to stay in the same place and he had to go through that process so someone could shoot him. Even though, as we said, I think the ending's a little bit unrealistic in the fact that I can form that message and opinion myself. I know that it would never wash clean. Therefore, I wouldn't expect him to stay in the same place. So it
yeah.
was trying to tell me one extra piece of information that I already knew, and I didn't need it as a scene.
Obviously, we sort of ended with the ending, and that was something that lowered both of our marks. So I just want to end with something positive and just say that this film does something that a lot of films don't really do anymore, and that is make you feel something. And the tools that they had, like there's no real violence. There's one scene of actual violence, I think, in the film. I think, but it's a very simple fight. It's not like outstandingly choreographed. It's just very realistic, very visceral. And yeah, for me, the acting was done superbly, and it got off the message that they were trying to portray, that you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You can't protest. You are silenced. But if you run away, you're guilty. And I'm just thoroughly glad that I watched it, especially on the back of sort of the last two films that we've seen. This one, I think, really, really deserves a place on this list. And I was so surprised because I would never watch this film in a month of Sundays if it wasn't for us doing these reviews. I'm so happy that we did.
Yeah.
So If you agreed with us, if there's any other points that we missed out, get them in the comments and we'll respond. Please like, subscribe, and we'll be back next time with Stanley Kubrick once again and Full Metal Jacket. We'll see you then.